Hey friends, this is Marilyn from tarotclarity.com. Today's video I think you're really going to like, and it was an idea brought to me by a subscriber, CB. Thank you, CB. I love hearing from my subscribers. Please, my email is tarotclarity@gmail.com, real easy to remember. CB may have been the inspiration for one of my last videos where I did a video on the cards 2 through 5. It was like brewing in the back of my mind, but she said, how's about you do a video on that? And I was timed to bring that one out. But this one, I may have done previous videos on this topic, but I have over 600 videos and sometimes things get buried and maybe I didn't properly label them or name them so that you could easily find them. So it's probably a good time to revisit, because you never know what I'm going to say and it's not going to be the exact same video, so there's always something new. Today's video will be on a comparison between the Rider-Waite-Smith pips and the pips of a Marseille or early Italian kind of deck, where there's no illustrations on the pips. Sometimes the meanings are the same, right? Sometimes they can be the same. But I think the issue that maybe folks who use pip style versus Rider-Waite-Smith, or if they come from Rider-Waite-Smith and they go into a pip style of reading, there's much more ability to let the cards speak to you and let the cards speak to each other when you have a pip style deck. I think the reasons will become clear once I flip the camera. So let's get started. Okay, for this comparison, I'm using the I'm using the Rider-Waite-Smith deck. This one is no special deck. This one I hadn't purchased until, I guess, 27, something like that. It's highly laminated, highly reflective. Each one of the cards says 1971, but obviously they weren't done in 1971. I'm kicking myself from here to forever, because at one point, and this must have been the earliest one that I owned, I had the Blushing Magician, and what I wouldn't do to have this one back, but it's like astronomically expensive if you can find it. It may have gotten lost in the divorce. Things got thrown away out of spite, I'm just saying. And I also moved across country a few times. Now, ironically, when I found this box, years ago, I was so excited. I was like, oh my gosh, there it is. I had that deck. And then when I opened it up, obviously it was empty, and the only card that was in it was a blank card. But you can see, now this, I don't know what year this was, because I don't even have the book. So I don't know offhand what year the Blushing, I'm kind of diverting the topic, aren't I? But you never know what I'm going to say. You could see there's quite a difference. There's a matte finish on these cards, whereas the one from 27 is like highly reflective and stuff like that. So I'm kicking myself. I moved across country twice. It's possible that I had some mishaps, I guess. I don't really know what happened. So, but at any rate, I'm using the 2007 one. So it's no big special deck. It's just the one I happen to have. Now, as a matter of fact, I happen to have several Rider-Waite-Smith decks. I have the 1909 reproduction. I have a 1910 reproduction. I have a lot of special quality Rider-Waite-Smith decks, but this is like at least the most pedestrian, and I just decided to use this one. To compare it to a pip style deck, I just used the Soprafino. The Soprafino from 1835. Most of you are familiar with seeing this. It's not a particularly early Italian deck. It's from 1835, but it is a beautiful one. And this is a deck where an example of Italy invented the game. It migrated to France. France made it very fashionable. And then it came back to Italy. It became fashionable once again to create beautiful cards in Italy. And then what they did was I think, fashioned their cards in the tradition of the Tarot of Marseille. So they adopted, not exactly, but more or less, the tradition of TDM. And they just did it with Italian flair. Nobody does tarot like the Italians. I say that all the time. It's true. Okay, so let's take a look at the pips, the aces of the pips. So I think we could safely say the same thing for both. The beginning of something. Whatever swords means to you, the beginning of that. It could mean the beginning of action, or take action, or an opportunity of a physical nature. It could also, with pips, it can also represent quick-wittedness, thought, thinking, dialogue. In today's world, it wasn't something that anybody would have imagined when this deck was created, and especially when these decks were created. It could represent communication through the wire. Even telephones were unthought of. Probably not thought of. I don't know about 1910, maybe 1909, maybe. I think you could fairly say with the Ace of Swords in either deck, you can come up with a very similar understanding of what those cards means. And here, with the arm coming from a cloud, and there's like action around the hand, so it's much more forceful, right? We get a sense that, here, look. And there could be a sense that you might be, it's an opportunity for achievement. Now, I don't know if those are sprigs of acacia or if those are laurel leaves. I'm not sure. I can't remember anymore. This one is, it's just being presented, but not with the kind of assertion that the Rider-Waite-Smith card is being. Let's look at the cups. Now, now they're both kind of religious looking. I mean, we have the, I guess that is an upside down M. But this kind of, we have the Eucharist, we have the dove, so it's very Catholic looking. But here, we do get a sense that this is a chalice that one might see in church, right? So there could be this suggestion that the suit of cups could be spiritual in nature. We have water here, so it could suggest emotional. We don't have that here, but the visual clues of that, but we know what does a chalice contain? Symbolically, the blood of Christ. And in regular life, a cup or a chalice will contain wine, it will contain water, it can contain any liquid. So I think we're good so far on the aces. Same thing. Again, the baton, which is assertive. Remember, the swords and the batons could be seen as phallics. They could be seen as aggressive suits, whereas the cups and the coins are more, passive. Certainly in the way they're represented by Rider-Waite-Smith, the batons and the swords have the action around the hand. So there's action. This might be action of a different nature. This might be action of like physical rather than, both can be physical. Both the swords and the batons can be physical. But for me, batons represents like collaborative action. And here we don't have the sense of immediacy, but we do see, hey, I'm presenting this stick to you, this log to you, do with it what you will. So I think here again, we can infer similar understanding. And same with the aces. Now we notice that the aces and the cups, there's action here too. So with the Rider-Waite-Smith, the only one that doesn't really seem to have action. Oh, they all do. I stand corrected. There's that little active thing underneath all of them. So I stand corrected there. It's been a long time since I studied the Rider-Waite-Smith, so please forgive me on that. But, so there's like an urgency coming in here too. I guess it could be seen that way. But the background is like, peaceful. It looks like an opportunity for growth or abundance. And this is just the coin. What does the coin mean? When you think of number one and you think of a coin and you reconcile it, that's how I do it. So you have, for me, the way I do it, I have an understanding of what one means, and then I reconcile it with what my understanding of the suit means, always in the context of a question. So far, I think we could, probably superimpose similar meanings. Now we get to the twos. Now here we have a woman who's blindfolded, sitting in front of a sea. She's got two swords. There's a moon. What's going on? She's making a decision, perhaps of a legal nature. Perhaps, she has to make a choice, using her mental acuity. I'm not sure. But here we don't get that. Here we have two swords. I reconcile what two means to me. It means, working in tandem with somebody, perhaps in a field of communication, perhaps in a field of law. It depends on the nature of the question, and it depends on some of the other cards that will fall. So I think we begin to see a little more flexibility with the two of pips than we do here, because we have to recognize that she's blindfolded, right? We have to kind of make sense of this. Okay, now we get to the Two of Cups. I think we can understand for both that there's a partnership. Two is a number of partnership. So we have, I think these two could be seen similarly. Certainly you go into partnership with somebody you trust. Okay, now we have three. Now here, I depart ways. Here it's as though somebody, this is a two. What the heck? Did I get these out of order? Let me check. Duh, this is a two. I don't know, my brain thought it was a three. Okay, so here we start to, in my view, start to get a different thing. Here we have somebody who has the globe in his hand. He's looking out toward the waters. Maybe he's waiting for a ship to come in. Maybe he's participated in something. I see batons as a suit of collaboration, social activity. So maybe he's put something forth in the world and he's waiting for it to come back. But that picture isn't evident here, right? So here I see, there's a collaborative effort. There's a collaborative effort between individuals. We'll see what the other cards have to say, what the nature of it is. And you do have to be careful with pips, because you see this thing, I was confusing it for a third baton. And I went searching for this two of batons when I had it all along. So it's kind of confusing sometimes. Okay, now we have two. Now see what happened to the three, though. I did screw up somewhere. All right, I'll have to figure it out. So here, and we have much the same, right? We have the lemniscate shape with the two. So, I have no reason to think that wasn't a source of inspiration for Pamela Coleman Smith. It might have been. So there's a balancing act, and we see rough waters in the background, and we see that the ships are navigating, choppy waters. So this person, like the Two of Swords, maybe it's a different message. But this person's balancing, so this is more of a balancing act. Do we get a balancing act per se over here? Not really. It's just a collaboration with another person regarding money, regarding well-being. Let's see what the other cards say. That's how it works with me. Okay, now when we get to the Three of Swords, with the Rider-Waite-Smith, especially if you're doing a reading for a person, it's hard for them to get past this image. Because this suggests one meaning of Three of Swords. And we get a sense for the first time with the Rider-Waite that there might be violence or aggression or something unpleasant about the Suit of Swords. So that comes to us really soon in the spread, in the sequence. So there's something of a harmful nature. Those swords have been on the attack. With the Three of Swords of a TDM style deck or a PIP style deck, an Italian deck in the PIP style or in the TDM style or whatever, however you want to put it. We don't have that. We have more flexibility. 3 I see is a number of growth, and sometimes the sword is pointing up and sometimes the sword is pointing down. Sometimes I don't concern myself about the pips, the directions they face. The only thing I do is I'll notice if it's facing down, I'll notice what it's pointing to, right? So 3 I see as growth. I see it as collaboration, which is beyond just 2 people being in on something. They've included a third person in an area that might require action. It might require legal. It depends on the nature of the question and the other cards. But I certainly wouldn't see it as somebody's going to stab you in the back or there's going to be grief, as we see here. So with this card, we have more flexibility. 3 cups, we see people celebrating. And notice that the configuration of the cups, Pamela Coleman Smith, does sort of have it in the same, triangular shape that we see in TDM style decks. So it could have been her inspiration to present them in that way. And when she presented them in that way, with an illustration, what makes more sense than having people celebrating? People are happy. They're celebrating something. And I think, the 3 of Cups could suggest celebration of something. So we could have that, But I wouldn't, unless there are other cards that really suggest that, or unless the question is, how will this party go? I'm pulling a party off this weekend. How will it go? If I see, positive cards that suggest growth and abundance and positive things, I might, the celebratory nature of the 3 of Cups might come out with a PIP style deck. But there could be other things. It could show an escalation of an emotional nature. If it starts out with a 3, but something progresses, and we have a few swords in there, and we have a few batons in there, and then we have like a 5 of Cups. If I see a lot of unstable cups, for example, I might begin to think, well, maybe it's not celebratory. Maybe there's something of an upsetting nature. Throw in the Moon card, and we got mental illness. But I don't think we have that. I don't know. Do we have that with Rider-Waite-Smith? We could. But again, if you're reading for a customer, it's hard for them to get past this as being anything other than celebratory. Okay, now I got a problem. Oh, but it's because I put the 3 of Swords over here, 3 of Batons over there. Okay, now I see what I did wrong. Okay, so here we have the 3 batons. Similar to the guy with the 2 batons, this guy might not be as worldly, he might not be as affluent, but he is also looking. Perhaps he's a traveler, and he's just checking out the landscape to decide which direction he's going in. But with 3 batons of a PIP style deck, I'll just think of growth, a collaboration, moving forward with something with a group of people. It depends on the nature of the question. It depends on the other cards that fall around it. There's a lot of flexibility. I wouldn't necessarily think you put something out in the world, or you're traveling and you need to, you're taking a pause to see what's before you move forward. That probably would never be something that I would think with the 3 of Batons, no matter what was in place with it. I'm sorry, I'm looking out the window. My husband's up to something. When he's up to something, he's not telling me. Sometimes he's up to no good. In the sweetest way, I mean. Okay, so let's move on. got the 3 coins. Now here we have like someone who's learning a trade, or he's being inspected by people who are in positions of authority over him, or, he's working on something and his patrons are checking him out. Certainly this is a skilled labor, he's not unskilled, but he's still working for other people. And that's kind of what this card means. But with a 3 pips, a 3 of coins of pips, it can mean growth and well-being. It is an unstable number, so we'll see what other numbers that there might present. Like that might be other, odd numbers that could present instability in the coffers, instability in money, instability of health, instability of well-being of some way. But that's quite a different message than we get here. And I don't know if I would necessarily ever say, well, this card is the card of the apprentice, or this is a card of somebody who's got some patrons and they're inspecting his work, or he's showing off his. I don't get that. It wouldn't be a message that I would think of. Okay, so here we move on to the 4 of Swords. So we have someone in repose. We have the effigy of a fallen soldier in a church. A need for rest, a need for respite. Four of Swords, stability. Could be a need for stability. Maybe not entirely off the mark. Perhaps a need to protect something. Perhaps, the venture that you've begun with other individuals, you now have 4 people involved, right? And now there's a group of you and you have to protect something. That's an aspect that might be picked up on. Sometimes stability can become ennui, and you see it with, here, right? We have the sense of ennui. So 4 could mean boredom in general, because sometimes when things are so stable, they do become repetitive and they do become boring. So that could be across the board with pip cards for number 4. Boredom or ennui could be an aspect of all of them in their realm. But it's not necessarily what's happening here. Here is just a call to relax, take stock of a situation. Okay, we have 4 cups, as I mentioned, ennui. You're being offered stuff, but you take it for granted, or you're just not grateful, or something like that. Whereas the 4 cups, I would say, as well, the stability of the emotions, or, 4 is not a bad number to have. But if you have 4s and you have a couple 8s, they could suggest, an inability to change or to try something new. And it could suggest inertia. But it's not the only thing that the 4 of a pip card could mean. It depends on the cards around it and in the context of the question. So with pips, what I'm trying to say is they really speak to each other. They really do. And the meaning, with Rider-Waite-Smith, each of the cards has a defined meaning. But with pips, the meanings come out in relation to one another in the context of a question. Okay, so here we have celebration. Everybody's happy. It could look like a marriage even, marital celebration. We have the canopy. Maybe they were married under there. They have, they're affluent people, or the venue is very nice. So we get a very positive feel from this number 4 here of Rider-Waite-Smith. It's a collaborative joy. I'm not necessarily feeling collaborative joy. I'm feeling stability. I'm feeling stability of working in partnership with others towards a goal. What are the other cards? What was the question? Okay, here we have the miser, or somebody who's clinging to something, right, for dear life. Or maybe they're investing their money. This guy kind of looks like he's miserly and he's not sharing. But, whenever I read with this card, with the Rider-Waite-Smith, I could also see it as you need to save some money because if you're working towards something, you're going to have a little bit to fall back on, or, in times of, trouble, economic trouble, it's not bad to have a nest egg. You don't want to spend all your money carelessly. You want to make sure you have some money in the bank, right? But this card kind of makes it look like he's a miser, that he doesn't want to share. Now, isn't it interesting that we have what appears to be a globe in the center, a reference to the world, which is very interesting. And then we have 4 coins, again, stability of the material realm. So if somebody says, will this job work out for me? And I were to see this card, I would say, yeah, I think it's a good foundation. If it's not the job where you end up with for the rest of your life, it's a good place to start. It offers stability. It offers, worldly growth. Here, I don't know. I wouldn't have that message if somebody were to ask the same question, will this job be good for me? And this was one of the cards. I would say something different than what I just said for this card. Okay, now we're already at 26 minutes. Oh, you guys are never going to stick with me that long. But for those of you who are willing to stick with me that long, thank you. And I do ask, if you've stuck with me this long, you must like what I'm doing. So please give me a thumbs up, share, and subscribe if you have not already. Okay, so here we are with the 5s of each suit. So we have what appears with Rider-Waite-Smith to be somebody cheated, or somebody, you win the battle, but you lose the war, kind of. He lost his dignity. Or, they feel like okay, here's the thing. Who's really the victor? He cheated, maybe. He did something to deprive others. He feels like a big man, but is he? That's the message I get from this card. The card of maybe a cheat. The card of just you win, but you lose your soul in the process. Here, I don't think that we'd get that, but just by looking at 5 swords. The sword is pointing down. Maybe that was an inspiration for one of the swords for Pamela Coleman Smith. I don't know. So when a sword points down or points up, as I mentioned, I like to look at what's underneath it. But if it's only a row of 3, then I could see this as somebody taking a stand. Somebody upset the apple cart. We had a stable 4. We got a 5th person. And the 5th person shook things up in the realm of whatever the swords represent in that context. Legal, physical, aggression. Now, this guy was aggressive too, maybe a certain amount of aggression. You notice that the swords are escalating. Now, the 4 was in repose, so the 3 was a little more aggressive than the 4, obviously. But now we got 5. We're back to being on a track for a certain amount of aggression. I don't know if I see aggression. When I see 5s, when I see, odd numbers, if I see a collective of odd numbers, then yeah, I do see instability. I do see that. And this is obviously unstable behavior. But I don't see necessarily that somebody cheated when I see this. Okay, here we have 5 cups. So we have someone who's forlorn, very sad, right? We have 3 spilt, 2 still standing. There's still something to build with, but that person is just mourning what they lost rather than seeing what remains. And then here we just have 5 cups. Now, we can say that they cross over because when we see 5s in Rider-Waite-Smith, maybe they tend to be melancholy. And so sometimes if I see a 5 of cups, I might think that it could be instability of an emotional nature. So there could be melancholy, particularly if the moon represents, or other cards that might represent instability of the emotions. Where are we? I think we're on 5, right? Okay. So here we have, people working together, but they're not working together very well. They're trying to put a tent together. I always think of it like whenever we used to go camping. We were all trying to help put the tent together, but it was chaos. And that's exactly what I think when I see this particular card. So they're people, it's a 5. It's an unstable number. So they're trying to work together collaboratively, but it's just not working out. You don't necessarily see that. But again, as I mentioned, if I see several odd numbers in a suit of batons in a spread, and if there is a collective effort to accomplish something, I might say, well, there's some instability there. So maybe there's crossover. It's not the only thing that I would think of. I mean, this image is not the only thing I would think of when I see 5 batons, rather. But it depends on if there's other ones, right? If there's other batons of an odd number, or if there's other suits of an odd number, especially if there's water presented with fire, which is how I see cups and batons, then I might say, well, you're working at odds with one another. It's not going to come through. But it's not just because I saw one card. It's because other cards spoke in unison with this card. I hope that made sense. And now we have 5 coins. I could see 5 coins feeling like this with a pip deck. Now here, 5, again, an unstable number. It's an odd number. The church, refuge is, help is right there, but they're walking right past it. They're not even, maybe they've been turned away even from them. I don't know. Maybe they're not seeking comfort from within, but maybe they already have and they've been rejected. Who knows? But this is a dark moment of the soul, of the suit of pentacles, which is money. So it suggests that they're really hard on their luck. They're down on their luck. Do I get that with five coins of a pip style? Not necessarily, but I do see it as an odd number, and I do see that there might be some, struggles with money, particularly if other odd numbers pop up, or other numbers or other suits that might be at odds with earth, like air. So these features might come through on a pip card, but it all depends on what else there is. Okay, 6. 6 is a perfect number. I see 6 as a perfect number. So anything with the 6 of Swords for me represents solid communication, good legal situation, action to take with dignity, especially if some card like Fortitude pops up, acting with integrity. This one, quite different. Person's leaving a situation, leaving troubled waters to go forth where maybe the waters are more calm, taking a child with her. He's either the boatman or he's with the party. He seems like he's just the hired person who's taking them across. I mean, this card probably resonates very well with a lot of people today. Trying to seek a better life for themselves. They're leaving trouble. They're trying to go someplace else. Hopefully the someplace else offers a respite. That used to be here, but it's not anymore, tragically. So with 6 swords, I don't get this picture of somebody traveling and somebody leaving and somebody going looking for something better. That it's not even one that comes on the radar of this card for me. I just see good, solid energy in the realm of the suit of swords in the context of whatever the question is. Again, 6 for me, perfect number. So perfect celebration, perfect joy, perfect solid emotions, things, not being unstable emotionally, healthy relationship if it's in a relationship. And here we have a youthful representation of, either an older brother or sister giving something to a little child, as a gift. We have an older individual, not part of their childhood innocence. He's got a staff, he's walking. He's independent of what's happening with them. but it's like a sweet image. Maybe a card of nostalgia, remembering your childhood. But that's not the image I have, just with the Six of Cups. In fact, I don't know if I'd ever think of childhood at all, no matter what other cards were around, unless it was surrounded by pages. And then I would, think of, concerning myself with the health, the well-being, the emotional well-being of a child or a younger person. I'm getting so confused, my goodness. Okay, Six of Batons. So we have a victor, right? Not quite the Chariot. This would be better if this was the Seven of Batons. I always thought this should be the Seven of Batons. However, 6 is a perfect number. And so it makes sense in a way that he is a victor. But 7 would make him a victor who's progressing and going forward. But anyway, I digress. So here we have a victor. That's it. He's done something. He's recognized by the crowd as the one to celebrate, like a hero in a sports match or something. Or could be a statesman or somebody who did something for the public. And the public is grateful for him and he's being celebrated. Do I get that with the Six of Batons of a pip deck? No. But I do get that it's a perfect number and there was a perfect collaboration. And if somebody wants to work for this particular company or whatever, I'd say, yeah, that's like a healthy card to have in working in unison with other people. Or, should I go to this parade? Should I participate? Well, it's like, yeah, that's a good, positive, collaborative thing. Now, I don't mean parade, I mean protests. I'm not talking about the parade. You know what I'm saying? I'm talking about the protests. So yeah, okay, if in the context of the question this card were to come out. So I get a good sense of stability within a collaborative effort. I don't necessarily think that one person's the victor, unless the person asking the question, will I be successful? And if this were to pop up, I'd say, yeah, there's a really good chance you will be. But in and of itself, it doesn't have that message for me. Okay, and here I think we have 6. Now the person who is miserly now is in a position to dispense. I don't know if it's the same person, I don't know. But this person could be generous. Or he could be, these people are really down on their luck. He doesn't look like he's at their level. He doesn't look to me like he's giving out of the goodness of his heart. Maybe he's giving because it's like a tax break, It could be. I never really felt this guy was all that sincere. But there is a call to maybe be generous. There is a call maybe to be willing to receive help if you're that person, right? There might be a need to ask for help. Because it's a 6, I want to believe that he's doing it from the goodness of his heart. But he doesn't look like that to me. He looks more like an individual who's doing it because there's something in it for him. Okay, so with 6 coins, again, perfect number. How many times have you heard me say 6 is a perfect number? So only the best features of that suit will be represented with the 6 as far as I'm concerned. So do you want to take the job? Well, it looks lucrative. It looks promising to me. I'm down on my luck. Oh my gosh, things are not working out. Well, especially if the Wheel of Fortune were to pop up or other cards that might suggest an increase in well-being. Now, if this number were to show up and then there were other numbers with a suit of coins that appeared that were escalating in number, I would say, yeah, this is a lucrative thing for you to do. If you want to do a venture and this shows up, I'd say, and then there were other cards of the suit of coins that were diminutive, that like were, going down a number, I'd say, well, it might not be worth the investment. You might not be worth the investment because things might not fall through, work out. I guess it's possible sometimes these cards' meanings might overlap, but not necessarily. And this is the only meaning this card has, the meanings I just described, unless you reverse it, But then it's a good point to mention, like if I were to see air around this card, a lot of air, a couple airs or above it or below it or next to it, I might suggest that, 6 is a perfect number and it looks like a good option, but you're going to have challenges if you have swords, especially because, air and earth, don't necessarily play good together. Moving along to the 7s. Oh boy, I guess this is getting way too long. I know most of you have already checked out. I'm doing it anyway for those of you who hang in there. Okay, 7, we have a thief. The thief in the camp, 7 swords, unstable number, the suit of air. Again, we have the sword facing down. Somebody's taking a stand. There were 6. Everything was good. Somebody's been added to the mix. A little bit of instability. Could be good, could be bad. Depends on what's next, what's around it. But not necessarily, this card doesn't necessarily give that meaning. Okay, too many choices. Making big promises, right? That's what this card kind of reminds me of when I see it. Could Pamela Coleman Smith have been inspired by the configuration of the 7 cups? Now, this isn't a traditional TDM, obviously. This is a Italian reinterpretation of the TDM style. So it wouldn't exactly be the way she might have seen a TDM 7. But I don't see the 7 of Cups as having too many options or being disillusioned or being like mesmerized by stuff. I don't see it that way. I see 7 as a moving forward to another level. It's not necessarily just because it's an odd number, unless it's in company with a lot of odd numbers, but just in and of itself, I don't necessarily see the 7 of Cups as being like unstable in a bad way. I see it more as unstable in moving forward toward growth and achievement. So I don't connect those two. And this is just the way I do it, so please don't yell at me that I'm wrong. It's just the way I do it. And for some of you, the way I see things might be similar and you might agree. Okay, here we have somebody who's defensive, right? And he's on a cliff too. He's been pushed into a corner because he doesn't look like he's got a lot of space behind himself, and there's nothing forward either. So he's got to be very careful. He's doing a balancing act here. He doesn't have a lot of leeway to defend himself. The crowd has turned against him, and he doesn't have a whole lot of possibilities. 7 of Batons, don't necessarily see that. As I mentioned, I see 7s as numbers of moving forward, a collaborative nature, people moving forward towards something that's not necessarily disagreeable. I see it as progress, moving forward collaboratively towards achieving something. Reflection on what he's accomplished, taking a moment to take a look. So much has been lost in this card from the 1909 or 1910 cards. So many repeated, and that's the truth with all of the cards, I guess. I should have probably used the 1909 or 1910, oh well. Well, here, I guess we could see a similar thing. You're appraising the progress you've made, right? Whereas the 7 of Coins, I still see 7 as moving forward, right? Moving forward, accomplishing. You're not there yet, but you're really, really close. Unless, of course, there's lots of odd numbers and they de-escalate, right? They go down, and then maybe there's be careful of moving in the wrong direction. But in and of itself, I just see it as promising of moving forward toward well-being, either with money, health, or whatever well-being means in the practical world. Okay, 8. We have somebody who's stuck in a situation they could easily get out of. Maybe it's a situation they've created themselves. I don't get any of that with this card. I get a building of stress, though. Now, it's not like the tension is building, right? It hasn't been released yet. Could be a good thing or it could be a bad thing. 8 of Swords could be, organized thought, which we don't get that here. We don't get any idea of organized thought here. But it could mean organized thought. A lot of thought has been put into something, and it's almost fulfilled at a 9. Somebody who's walking away. It's not because they don't have what they need. They just are rejecting it. They're just walking away with their 5 cups. With their 8 cups. With the 8 cups here, I just see it as, again, the 7 of cups, the working emotionally towards something. Again, we have a number of stability. So there's no sadness necessarily in this card. There's stability. There's emotional stability here. Now here, we have the appearance of the moon and the sun. Could this suggest emotional instability? I would never get that with this card. And as I mentioned, if you see a couple 4s and you see a couple 8s, it could be boredom, status quo, time, need to shake things up. If a sword were to show up in an odd number, or a baton were to show up in an odd number with a lot of 4s and 8s, it would be like definitely time to shake things up for sure. And I don't necessarily get the overlapping meanings here. Okay, 8 of batons, 8 of batons. Something coming to rest or something being sent out. Sometimes in cards, sometimes in decks, I can't tell if the batons are being thrown or if they're coming to rest. They seem to be coming to rest here. So something maybe will reach a conclusion. 8 batons. A collaborative, more than one person threw these, right? So a collaborative effort will come to a conclusion. Maybe not such a far mark with this 8 of batons. I see it as a collaborative effort in an arena where people are working together towards something. So 8 means that they're almost achieving, not necessarily that it's coming to rest, but that they're almost there. They're close to achieving what they put together to do, what they got together to do. And here we have the apprentice from the 3 now being somebody who's working for himself. He's no longer working for a patron. So he's doing his own thing. He might, he's got 8 of these things. He's making the same thing over and over and over again. It may not be the most fulfilling work, but at least he's working for himself. Here we have 8 coins, well-being, stability. Really getting close to the mark of fulfillment. This guy doesn't seem fulfilled to me. He doesn't seem like he's working toward fulfillment. He just seems like he's working toward boredom. But when I see and that could be the case, as I mentioned, if there was other 4s and the appearance of 4s and other 8s, right? Which are numbers of stability. But in and of itself, it just seems like progress, getting really close to achieving the monetary goal that you set out for yourself, or really close to achieving something regarding well-being. Okay, now we're 9. Now, when a client sees this, there's no getting around this. This is heartache, There's no saying, well, pretty soon your legal matter will come to a conclusion, because all that means is, well, it's not going to be good for you. Unless they ask the question, how will it turn out for this SOB? That if the question is something like, how will it turn out for the SOB who's suing me? Well, then if that's the question, then this looks like, well, the SOB is going to have a hard time dealing with it, or it's not going to work out for him. 9 is a number of something coming to a conclusion. So it means that it will be, whatever has been building up will climax soon, right? But depending on who this reading is for, it's not going to be good. It's going to be something that causes them heartache, causes them suffering. It's the stuff that keeps you up all night. Okay, 9 of Swords. Now we do see some tension, but we see the tension being pierced, there's been a breakthrough. So it could be a release of tension regarding an issue that has escalated. Could it be aggression? Yeah, could be. Depends on the question, right? It could be legal, could be communication. It could be a book deal coming to a conclusion. I wouldn't necessarily say this is a book deal coming to a conclusion. I'll just say whatever's coming to a conclusion is not going to be a healthy one. It's going to keep you up at night. But that's not necessarily what I would get here. Just something, the tension's being broken. It's gone as far as it's going to go before it begins to collapse. 10 is a number where it's there, you got it, but there's no way to go but down. Here we're still going forward, but we've pretty much hit our mark. Here I just call this card the wish fulfillment card. I don't know. I think this is a stupid looking wish fulfillment card. I think it's supposed to be based on, what's his name, Flagstaff? A Shakespearean character. Well, most of these images, obviously, from Rider-Waite-Smith. Pamela Coleman-Smith was obviously, influenced by stage and theater. So a lot of references can be made. Some of the cards actually look like they're on a stage. Hey, here's one. Looks like he's on a stage. Falstaff, excuse me, not Flagstaff. Falstaff, I think that was his name. My memory sometimes is not always so good. But he's, satisfied with himself, I guess, and he's got what he wants. But I love a simple arrangement of nine cups for wish fulfillment. I just love it. And I see, there are other ways to see 9 cups other than wish fulfillment. But when I see it, that's the first thing that pops into my head. And it's one thing that I, use from the occultists that I kind of like. I like having one card that just means, yeah, But in the context of a question, and if there's a lot of unstable numbers, if there's a lot of odd numbers of the realm of the Suit of Cups, and then there's a moon card, I might not see it as wish fulfillment. I might see it as, be careful. Maybe go see a psychiatrist. If the hermit's in there, I would definitely say, maybe counseling wouldn't be a bad idea. Okay, this guy, the battle's over. He's weary, and he's on the. He's not actively engaged in defending himself, but he's waiting for the next wave, Do I get that from this? No, I don't. I see it as a collaborative effort in whatever realm the question was asked, that they've gone as far as they could go, where, if somebody's like talking about a hiking group, or a group where people get together as any kind of club or any kind of sport thing or any kind of, office party on the weekend to celebrate, once a year, right? I just see it as, coming to it, people working together and coming to that point of satisfaction among themselves, unless there were other cards that were odd or of a different suit like water. So in and of itself, the pip cards can have a few meanings. In and of itself, each of these cards are kind of locked in. And I just think that I personally felt that, from the beginning, well, I didn't know any better because the only cards I ever had were the one J.J. Swiss initially. I'm guessing that this Blushing Magician was the first Rider-Waite-Smith deck I had. Either that or the Albano Waite-Smith. That might have been, I don't know which one was. This must have been first because I guess this came. This must have been the first Rider-Waite-Smith deck I had, which, as I mentioned, I got lost in life. But, and I got it because obviously it was always everywhere. And so I figured, I guess, at some point after I'd been reading cards a while, I figured I needed to get a copy of the Rider-Waite-Smith deck. But I was frustrated with using it because I didn't feel like I had the flexibility, and I just didn't feel like I could be fluid. Okay, I digress. Here we have 9. And here we have somebody who's at the top of her game. She's got a beautiful life, you know, she's wealthy, she's in want of nothing. And I could see that with this, depending on the nature of the question and depending on the other cards. Yeah, you know, something is going to be lucrative, something's going to be nice. Sorry. Things monetarily will work out. So I guess that, you know, that's not so far from the mark. Could be other things if there's other odd numbered coins, especially if they de-escalate in number, then there could be instability there. But it depends, right? But in and of itself, I could see that these two might jibe. But this is what this means, unless it's upside down, which maybe it takes on a different meaning. But with, you know, the beauty of the pip cards is that a card doesn't matter if it's upside down or right side up. It matters what's around it. And I think sometimes we lose sight of that when we have these, when we use RWS, because we're not really looking so much at what's next to it. What we do, okay, I'm not saying we don't, because we do blend the cards. So I'm not saying that this is void, that this deck is void of doing that. But I don't think you know, are calling to mind that if this is surrounded by swords, it might not be a good thing, because you're so sucked in with the images, the individual images, that we're maybe not looking at that feature. You know, now maybe if this and this were next to each other, and not by virtue that this is swords and this is coins and they don't get along well, but just by virtue of this being like, oh, something's not good. Oh, it's probably going to affect your health, you know, health and well-being. You could see that, but not because it's because of the image. It's not because, what am I trying to say? Let me try to articulate what I'm thinking. No, I guess I can stand corrected. If I were to see these in proximity of one another, if they were touching, I guess this would definitely affect the nature of this. Maybe somebody will stab you in the back, try to prevent you, or somebody's jealous, something like that. I mean, I could see coming to that conclusion. Which might be the same conclusion I would come to if I saw swords next to coins, because they are air and earth. So there's a good point there, that you would blend these. But, you know, it depends on how they're laid out too. If they're not in a configuration next to each other, they may not. I think it would only really affect me to see these cards if they were in a row. And when I tend to read Rider-Waite-Smith, I tend to read them in a row, because I do like to see, because I'm trained, you know, the way I do it, I'm trained to see how they get along with each other, you know. But when I do the Celtic Cross, and it is available on my website. And it is a spread that people like, you know, but they don't necessarily, except for the first two cards that play off one another. It's kind of hard for me at least, to see them as anything other than individual. All right, I'm taking too much time. 10, where's 10? Oh, did I do 10? What the hey? I don't know what happened there. Okay, I don't know what happened. Oh, I apologize. Please forgive me. Whatever faux pas I just did, I don't know. I got confused. Okay, I picked it up as an example. All right, 10 swords. It's over, put a fork in it. And that could be said of any of the 10s. Whatever it is has run its course. Time to start fresh. New ideas are necessary. If cards of if odd numbers were to come after a 10, I wouldn't necessarily see it as a bad thing in the context of the question, because it could just mean shake things up. Time to shake things up. Time to get new blood. Time to get things going. And I could see these things meaning similarly. Same here. Oh, everything's great. They've achieved, you know, they're happy. Their family's happy. Everything's good. Now, you know, things could be maintained in a good way. Things could stay at a happy level. But just bear in mind that when you've achieved the top, there's no place to go down, emo boy. There's no place to go but down. Well, I guess the sky is the limit. I guess you can always get more. But the nature of 10 suggests that something is oversaturated. And, you know, it's a cycle. The Wheel of Fortune is 10. Things start over again, right? I think we have a reminder here. Wish has been fulfilled. Time for new fresh blood. Is there a lid on that one? There's no lid on that one. Sometimes the 10 of cup at the top has a lid so nothing's spilled. To me, sometimes that makes a difference. If it has a lid, it suggests you want to keep, you're keeping what you got. You don't want to lose it. Without a lid, it could just mean time for fresh blood or fresh water to flow. Okay, this guy's got a burden. I don't necessarily see 10 batons as a burden. I see it is. You've achieved what you as a collective group set out to do. You won your gold medal. Time to work for next season. This one is more like there's a burden this guy's carrying. And with the 10 of coins, and I will stop here. I won't go on to quartz. 10 of coins, we have an elder gentleman. Don't forget to notice him. This is his legacy that he's passing on. He's achieved quite a bit, and he's passing it on to the next generation. That's how I see this card. And the dogs are paying attention to him, and the child is paying attention to the dog. But this, you know, don't blow the legacy, you know. Keep it going. And 10 coins. I'd rather have 10 coins than one, that's for sure. So 10 coins to me suggests reaching a goal. You know, unless there's other cards that present that might contradict that. But I can definitely see these two things being similar. Yeah, you've reached your goal. You have a legacy to leave. That could be an aspect of it, depending on the question. In and of itself, not necessarily. Anyway, I hope this video has been interesting to you guys. I want to thank CB for putting the idea in my head. I mean, I think I have done others, but I don't think I did them as painfully detailed as I did this one. As for the Triumph cards and the suit cards, the court cards, I think there's overlap with those, you know. I mean, if you want me to, I'll do the court cards and I'll do the Triumph cards in another video. But I'll only do it if you stayed this long and you say, would you do that for us? Then I'll do it. Otherwise, I'll assume there's no interest and I won't do it. Until next time, friends, peace, stay well, be brave.